Guys, welcome back to Higurashi. Sir, we're preparing to land. Excuse me, but please fasten your seatbelt. You see the guy falling asleep, fast asleep beside the plane. I was finally woken from my slumber by the stewardess. Okay, so we already left here in the Misawa then. All right. I only had carry-on luggage on top of it being a domestic flight, so the time between disembarking and into the lobby was almost non-existent. Arriving at the lobby, I glanced around looking for Oishi and was met with a familiar gruff voice calling out to me. Akasaka-san, ha ha ha, how many years has it been? Wait, did we go back to Higurashi? I'm so confused. Did our kid get born? What? Did he see it in time and name it? What? Find out if it was a girl or not? What's going on? It's been a while, hasn't it? I wish she said it really has been a long time. I wish he clapped his hand down on her shoulder and celebrated our reunion. Akasaka-san, you're looking pretty good. You look like a bona fide front-line investigator now. You're looking quite dapper yourself. Your post-dressing's a lot better. Is it the ballroom dancing paying off? You should give it a try while you're still young. You'd be a hit with the ladies, a real babe magnet. I wish she had retired and moved to Sapporo and all things, or started taking ballroom dance lessons. He had apparently gotten really into it and decided to spend the rest of his new life devoted to that hobby. He was aiming to get his instructor's qualifications before he hit 80 and live out his old age dandily. I let myself into Oishi's car and we headed out towards a hot spring inn. I originally intended to crash at Oishi's place, but Oishi was quite obstinate that his home wasn't suitable for that, so it came to this. At the end, we relaxed while soaking in the hot springs, reminiscing about the time we played mahjong together in Himatsubushi. It seemed that to celebrate our reunion, Oishi had looked for people who could play, but unable to find a suitable candidate, we had to give up on putting together a table. As we drank together, we excitedly recounted our exploits during the final manhunt. Did they end up catching those two guys? Nope. In the end, the search team never found them. They were probably hidden by the villagers they had sent overseas or somewhere else far away to lay low for a bit. Oishi said, if I remember correctly, you managed to grab one of the guns, didn't you? Did you learn anything from that? It was a Chinese-made military pistol, probably from the ones the gangs in Kansai managed to smuggle in a ton of. We tried to get a match from the rifling, but it didn't show up in any other cases. How about on your end? After that, I was removed from the front line, so I don't know much. In the end, it seems like everything was settled under the veil of secrecy. Nah, Oishi smiled wryly as he sipped his chill drink. What happened after that was sure tough, huh? Well, this will be 7 years now? Yeah, we held a memorial service a few days ago. I've become estranged with my father-in-law lately, so it was rough getting together. It was rough getting everything ready. Nah, that must have been a lot of work. It was then the hostess brought in the extra drinks that we had ordered before. While the bottles of our beer clanked as she brought them in, we halted our conversation. What made Oishi man, when he said it must have been tough. I think about that was still hard, but the time I had healed the wound. It was the day after when I phoned Oishi to apologize. When I did, Oishi almost immediately handed the phone to one of our colleagues who had happened to be there. Not only was I injured in the brawl with the suspects, but I disappeared to drink late into the night without leaving any sort of contact information. So I thought he'd definitely be mad. However, all he said was that it was something he couldn't talk about over the phone, and that I should come over to the station as soon as possible. Right, so are we back to this now? Man, I'm confused. And the time I could only think that he must have been really pissed off. But at least now we know everything's going to be okay, because when we just had a 7-year reunion, so I mean, yeah. But when I arrived at the station, he said this. It seems your wife was involved in an accident. Having no idea what happened, I borrowed the phone to contact the Kuyu hospital Yuki is staying at. After being given up the runaround several times, I was finally able to talk to someone in charge. After menacing words for quite some time, they told me Yuki Akasaka was killed in an accident. Their world became a blur as I sat there dumbfounded. Yuki's death was unbelievably abrupt, unbelievably sudden. I could have understood there's some kind of problem during the birth, but Yuki's death wasn't anything like that. On the stairs on the way up to the roof, she just happened to slip and fall. And she just happened to fall in an unfortunate place at an unfortunate angle. That was it. Wanting to blame Yuki's death on somebody, began to think there was an act of revenge by the Defense Alliance that they killed my wife and made it look like an accident. What I learned And I learned when I flew back to Tokyo, however, it was much more cruel than that. You get a habit of going up to the roof to cool off in the evening. There was an elevator up to the 7th floor, but from where you had to take the stairs to get to the roof. Even late in her pregnancy, when the evening came, she would always head up there. Her father had always said not for her not to push herself, but Yuki insisted that until the time she had no choice but to stay in bed, she should be allowed to do as she wished. However, I never once seen Yuki go up to the roof. I only heard that from her father and the nurses. That was because whenever I visited her, she would spend the time with me instead. I heard the reason why Yuki went up to the roof from a nurse she had become friendly with. She said that her husband was away on business a lot of the time, and that whenever she called, she was able to cheer him up and give him courage. But when he didn't call, she couldn't do that. Her husband might put on a show of bravado, but in reality, he grew lonesome pathetically fast. She's probably just the same. Whenever he left for business, not clear when he'd be back, she felt very lonely. Whenever she cheered him up, she was actually cheering herself up as well. That's why whenever he went far away for an important job, on the evening he didn't call, at the very least, she felt that standing underneath the same sky, her feelings would reach him. At that moment, I remember the words that girl had told me, that it was best I go back to Tokyo right away. Otherwise, it would be something I would regret horribly. Yes, that's it, because I was away on the business that day. Yuki head up to the roof. Had I known that this would be the result, had I done it as the girl had said, dropped everything and headed back to Tokyo, I might have been with Yuki on the day she died. If I was with her, she wouldn't have gone up to the roof. The day my wife died was the evening of the third day of my trip. Yes, it was right before the time I had that sudden urge to hear Yuki's voice and ran around the village trying to find the phone. The girl had gone around to cut all the cords. If she hadn't and I had made that call, I would have undoubtedly learned of Yuki's death at that time and collapsed in tears. Of course, even though the cords were cut, it only put me off learning of Yuki's death by that one evening. In the end, I learned of it the next morning. However, when I managed to put my emotions in order, I realized it was that girl's small token of consideration. That was the first I've heard about that. Yeah. Okay, I guess we'll just talk about memories now or something during the reunion. Okay, that makes more sense, I guess. No, how could it have been a coincidence? She doesn't have any special powers or anything. Are you the one who told me, Oishi-san, that she might be the reincarnation of the god called Oyoshiro-sama? Well, yeah, the old folks in the village believed that Rikufude had divine powers. Divine powers. Oishi had originally said it was a kind of joke, but realizing that was serious, he slumped his shoulders. I don't know if it's the truth or not. They said she did things like prophesize the future or talk about things she should have no way of knowing. That she was very clairvoyant, that it was divine revelation, and all sorts of things. Of course, they couldn't give specific examples, so she prophesied Yuki's accident, or she tried to laugh it off out of respect for like the deceased wife. He kept her restrained. Does that mean an active and capable investigator from the Metro Police Department believes in divine powers and curses? Having said that so bluntly, I couldn't respond. Of course, I had no intention of believing such odd things. But he could only say that because he didn't know what I did. Since I met that other girl who both was and wasn't Rikufude, I couldn't deny the existence of any otherworldly entity. Of course, I could deny that I might not have been prescience, but a rather a warning. Not prescience, but wait. Okay. If that the girl had said was a warning about Yuki's accident, then things became much easier to understand. Basically, the line of thinking became that it was a threat because I didn't go back to Tokyo. My wife was killed in a way that made it look like an accident. Not satisfied with the investigation into your wife's accident, of course, that's suspected foul play. I pored over the results and even carried out my own personal investigation. There weren't any witnesses to Yuki's fall. There was a possibility that someone had hidden and waiting to push Yuki's down the stairs. However, the cleaning ladies frequented the roof to hang laundry, and the security cameras on each floor hadn't recorded anything out of the ordinary. There was a set up on the stairs, and I was unable to find anything suspicious. In the end, even after my personal investigation, I can't think that anything else happened other than a simple accident. Well, of course, there were the guys that took witnesses' grandson hostage. It wouldn't be impossible for them to push a lone pregnant woman down the stairs without leaving any evidence. Oishi's expression had completely sobered up. They murdered your wife? When Yuki died, I thought that as well. I'm more precise, I wanted to blame somebody, so I created the most viable scapegoat. But without any clear evidence, that violation notion faded along with the wounds in my heart. That girl knew beforehand about my wife's death and was threatening me. What if she prophesied that death? It was offering me a road to salvation. If I had to choose between the two, I would tend towards the latter. She smiled slightly in disbelief as he poured more beer from his bottle. And if I may, what you say is true, then Rikufude was a prophet who knew the future. If so, why didn't she predict that disaster? If she knew that the gas eruption was going to happen, why did she remain silent? Even a few hours beforehand would have been enough. If the village knew that most of the people would have escaped without dying. It was the end of June 1983. Okay, I think this is the ending from the last Higurashi game, when Kiichi actually survived everything but died years later. So I think he fell off the bridge or pushed off by Satoko, and he somehow survived the gas poison explosion thing. Okay, it was near the end of 1983. June 1983, volcanic gases from the Onagafuji swamp erupted and hit the village in the middle of the night. It was an unprecedented disaster where the whole populace was wiped out. It was caused with a panic by volcanic gas across the country, causing people to overact over any reports of hot smells. I hadn't heard of the blockade on the Himatsubushi area being lifted, so it should still be cordoned off. Was my turn to be lost for response. Well, Afrika Furude was a reincarnation that Oyoshiosama was killed and the village might have incurred the god's wrath, making him call forth the Maya-sama from the swamp to kill everyone. The explanation is what the survivors were whispering about. Sorry, Ushi-san, did you just say she was killed? Huh? Yes. Well, I don't think it would be a problem if I told you. When I saw the news about the gas disaster, I remembered that girl. I then found her name on the list of the victims. That's why at the time I thought her own death, as she had predicted, was due to the gas. It was after that I learned from the tabloids that the series of mysterious deaths in Himatsubushi during the 5 years leading up to the disaster that became known as the curse of Oyoshiosama. And that string of mysterious deaths lined up exactly with what the girl had predicted, so I had always thought to ask Oishi about it, as he had been involved in the investigation. That's right, that was the reason for our reunion, but right now Oishi had said Rika Furude didn't die in the disaster, but was killed. Can I ask you about the last year of the curse? I may be retired, but I still have to keep things confidential, you know. Excuse me, madam, do you have anything cold that's brewed locally? High grade if there is. I'll leave this selection to you. Oh my, I didn't mean it that way. She laughed loudly, now wholly unsatisfied, and stopped the hostess to tell her that the cheap booze was fine. I know it's what's just written in those magazines, but I don't know anything about the curse that happened in the year of the disaster. Because the entire area around Himatsubushi was sealed off, you see, there wasn't much of an investigation that could be done on the last year of the curse. Even after several years of quarantine is lifted, the villagers are mostly dead, and what few survivors there were mostly went to stay with their relatives. Their whereabouts mostly unknown. It was a complete dead end. Oishi seemed to postulate to himself as he stared at the ceiling as if trying to work out a memory from the rusty cogs in his head. And he said in a completely sober voice, the magazines made it seem like the curse of the 5th year was that disaster, but the actual curse actually really happened on the day of the Tanagashi festival. A photographer by the name of Jiro Tamatake, he was the victim. Oishi gestured about how the victim tore out his own throat with his fingernails as he talked. Aren't we Tamatake? I thought we was Tamatake. I thought we had the same name. I'm confused. In the burnt corpse of the woman, Tamatake was in a relationship was found in the mountains in Gifu. The Gifu prefectural police weren't very cooperative, so I don't know much about it though. There were 2 victims in one night. And actually, see, it wasn't just those 2. You see, the next day, Kumagi-kan, one of my subordinates, disappeared along with his car in the middle of an investigation. Kumagi was a younger detective that was going to be partnered with Oishi after we first met. He was going around the village to question people about the incident with Tamatake. He might have gotten caught up in something, but if he was with me, he might have been a save. Even now, it still stings. That day, for some reason, I did a real number on my stomach. I had to pass on going around the side. He got too close to the truth and was ready to disappear. That's what I think. Kunichi was young and had promised future ahead of him, but he still didn't have enough experience on the scene. He wasn't used to dealing with any complications. Oishi limited the fact that he wasn't with his subordinate that day. And then the next day, you see, might as well, Akasaka-san. Dr. Irie. You remember him? That young doctor from the hospital? I vaguely remember. For whatever reason, he committed suicide with sleeping pills. No, not suicide, not anything. The autopsy confirmed that it was the sleeping pills. Nothing was in doubt except for the motive. Isn't that hard to make it look like somebody died from sleeping pills? Is there any possibility it was a murder? He was a single, no prior marriages. It didn't seem like he was going out with anybody in particular. He was the coach of the local junior baseball team. He was on good terms with the villagers. He was liked by everybody. I couldn't find anybody who would want to do him harm. Well, any chances to investigate were ruined by the disaster, though. There's no way to find anything about him now. Then what about Rika Furude's death? It was the day after around noon. Some of the old folks who were visiting the shrine discovered the corpse of Rika Furude. Murder, before we could continue, you should probably stop eating that squid salmon. That bad? Oishi nodded firmly. The corpse was found on the shrine grounds next to the donation box, although she was probably killed somewhere else. That's because while she was completely naked, there wasn't any dirt on the soles of her feet, and he said that was some sort of sexual assault. According to the autopsy, there wasn't any indication of that. What we know is she was rendered unconscious by some sort of drug, carried to that place, and had her abdomen sliced wide open. Her organs were deliberately removed and scattered about. Unconscious, then she was cut open after her death. That's horrible. The girl's prediction was right on the mark. I'm pretty sure she was more detailed about the other deaths that led up to her own. For example, I think she said that housewife that was beaten to death on the fourth year had her head split open. In that case, did she know that her own death would be so terrible? There must have been some moments where she wanted to doubt the validity of her own predictions, but as people died, exactly as she as prophesied, as the years passed, that prophecy would only come closer to her fruition. And then facing the final year and able to struggle against her own destiny, her all too young life was snuffed out in the end. Such a cruel way, knowing that her days were numbered and able to fight the tide of her events heralding her, and my heart ached at her helplessness. But the way she died, it seemed like it wasn't just somebody's sick taste. What I'm saying is, I told you before about Himatsubushi used to be demons, and I think I remember. The festival in Himatsubushi village where Tanagashi, the cotton gin, seems to steer from the drifting event trails. It seems like a game when the man-eating demons ripping apart their victims and throwing their organs into the river. In other words, in Himatsubushi pulling out entrails has some sort of religious meaning. Well, this is according to the old tales in Himatsubushi. You see, the actors and the arbitrator, so that the humans and the man-eating demons could live together peacefully. A god known as Oyashiro-sama descended from the heavens. If I recall, Rika Fude was said to be the living incarnation of that Oyashiro-sama, wasn't she? Yeah, so couldn't help but Rika Fude, who was a living god, would be to the village nothing less than absolute sacrilege. Absolute sacrilege. In other words, she made sacrilege towards Oyashiro-sama. The rest you should know, Akasaka-san. The wrath of Oyashiro-sama would occur that same night, the great Himatsubushi disaster. The official explanation was that the swamp upstream erupted with toxic volcanic gas, which enveloped the village. The swamp where it erupted was called Onigufuchi Swamp. It was the origin of Himatsubu's old Onigufuchi village. According to village lore, the depths of the swamp apparently led to hell where the men-eating demons came from. That almost seems too perfect. Oh, no, that's just a tip of the iceberg. There was another bit of folklore in the village. If Oyashiro-sama became angry, the cauldron of hell would open up and Maya-sama would flow out, or as they say. To the villagers, hell was the bottom of the swamp. At the bottom of the swamp. So basically, Maya poured out a smother in the village. Yeah, basically due to the sacrilegious way that the Fuka Fude, the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, was killed, the village incurred the wrath of the Oyashiro-sama in the form of that disaster. That seems to be their explanation. So what you're saying is that the disaster was a natural one. Well, everything does seem to fit together a little too well. If Oyashiro-sama's curse doesn't really exist, and everything was just a matter of coincidence, I would doubt it. A very small form of Wishi's face as he listened to my absurd take on things. He wore an expression as though, even if it were absurd, there was time that he thought the same thing as well. In regards to religious beliefs of the villagers, supposed there was a more fanatical following among them, and that group created a situation that would incur Oyashiro-sama's wrath, and enacted a disaster to make it seem like the truth. Of course, I won't laugh. I will wonder that on that line of reasoning more than once myself. However, you know, Himatsubushi is a small village that still has a population of over 1,000 people. To murder that many people in a single night doesn't seem realistic, no matter how you think about it. The gas eruption was believed to have happened around 2 a.m., several hours before dawn. In a short amount of time, going around killing all the villagers in a way that made it look like poison gas didn't seem feasible at all. The swamp the gas erupted from still had some religious significance in it. It's a case that maybe there was something set up in the swamp, something that could be activated whenever divine verdict was rendered. According to the JSDF press release, the swamp was declared the source of eruption. This was after everything was thoroughly looked over by their investigative team. If everything like that was set up, I think they would have found it. I wouldn't necessarily have to be in the swamp itself. Come on, have you ever heard about it? The old story about how in a faraway spring dried up, the village spring dried up as well. What do you mean by that? Many waterways are connected by underground aquifers. Swamps and springs are the only parts that manage to pop above the surface. So what you're saying is that Onigufuchi Swamp is connected to another swamp or spring, and that something the villagers rigged up there long ago, something that changes the pressure of the Onigufuchi Swamp. causing it to erupt with poison gas. Is that what you're getting at? Oishi laughed heartily, commending the fact that the youngins have a naturally flexible way of thinking. Now, as the former Detective Van Ham, even though it was a hypothesis that he didn't come up with, he still had the presence of a mind to not dismiss it right away. That's an interesting theory. If it proves to be true, it would be unprecedentedly the largest mass murder in the history of Japan. Once a quartet on Himatsubushi village is lifted, I think it should definitely be investigated. Oichi-san, do you still have any connections to the Essex Prefecture Police? Somewhat. I'm an honorary advisor for their judo classes, so even now I pop by during summer training camps and such. I don't know when the quarantine in the Himatsubushi village will be lifted, but please let me help investigate. Got it. Oishi-san, how do you feel about the string of mysterious deaths in Himatsubushi, what they call the Curse of Hiroshima? At the time, the villagers were putting a lot of pressure on the station. The official stance of the things is that the cases are unrelated, that each case was separate, each with its own resolution. That couldn't be, even though it was blatantly obvious that the case was connected based on the villagers' religious beliefs. Akasaka-san, we can only say that now because of the rather grandiose way of things in it after 5 years. At the time, those coincidental incidents were just happening to coincidentally occur on the day of Higurashi. Just a bit would be nice if that happened this year, kind of feel to it. Coincidence? The girl predicted everything from the beginning. Girl, Rika Fude, that child warned me about all the incidents that would happen afterwards. Akasaka-san, is that true? Yes, the girl said us about that next year the damn foreman would be killed and his corpse dismembered. Not only that, she warned me of all the events that would have transpired in the following years. Akasaka-san, when she told you all this, what year was it? When I met the girl, I was investigating the kidnapping incident, so June of 1978, the year before the dismemberment murder. Wrinkles formed between Oishi's eyebrows as she closed his eyes and began to digest what I had just told him. Akasaka-san, if you're wrong about Rika Fude knowing the future through of divine medium, this is getting ridiculous. Yep. If you're just trying to shock me, I'm going to be really angry, and now I'm speaking the truth. The script behind the chain of mysterious deaths was written a year before it even started, and just as predicted, Rika Fude was killed. At first, I thought she meant that she would be killed in a disaster. However, now I know that her death wasn't due to that, rather than an atrocious one at the hands of a murderer. She said she wouldn't be killed at the point in time she knew more or less how her own death would occur. Then why didn't Rika Fude try and run away? Even if her death was already spelled out for her, knowing that she still had a grace period of several years, didn't she? She had plenty of time to try and run away or consult the police, or did she just accept her death with no resistance? I don't know. Even though Rika Fude was doted upon by the older folks at Village, you see, although she lost her parents, she had no living relatives that lived a fairly solitary life other than hanging around with some close friends. It might have been that she didn't have any power to fight or anybody to rely on. She must have tried signaling to somebody for help in regards to her own death, though. You know very well that the village and police weren't very amicable with one another. Akasaka-san, at the very least, I never heard anything about Rika Fude seeking protection from anybody. Or could it be that she simply resigned herself to being a religious sacrifice? It could have been something like that. There's no way that was the case. I spoke decisively at the time she said it. She definitely said that she wanted to live happily, that she wanted to spend her time surrounded by her dear friends. She hadn't given up on life, so she had hoped to keep on living. That moment I became dumbstruck. What's the matter, Akasaka-san? No, it's nothing. I fell into silence. Oishi folded his arms and began murmuring in contemplation again. Eventually, he stood up and headed towards the hallway to find the hostess, yelling that he wanted a pen and paper. When Oishi noisy, even though he was just thinking left, the room immediately fell into a chilled silence. I stood up when I realized I was drunk enough to be unsteady on my feet. When I stood up at the window, a beautiful yet somehow ephemeral moon drifted across the night sky. It was just now that I realized she hadn't accepted her own death. She wanted to keep living, happily and joyously. She had said that quite clearly to me, but I was a fool. I hadn't been asked explicitly, so I hadn't realized it. She had made it clear as day that she didn't want to die. Was it that her cry for help? She didn't say as much as she wanted help. But even that, it was as though she was looking for salvation. Without any feeling unable to trust the police, she instead told somebody without any relation to the village, somebody from a faraway place. Me. Help me. She had gone around and cut the phone cords. If I had made that phone call on Yuki's death, I'd probably have fallen to despair. If I was in that state, even if she was looking for her help, her cries would have fallen on deaf ears. That's why, knowing everything, she had cut the phone cords. She wanted a little time to seek help from me. Or she just before now had limited that one of the young officers got mixed up in a case having been erased because he wasn't there. I was feeling the same way. If I was there in June of 1993, I could have protected her. In 1983, it would have been 5 years since the kidnapping took place, while raising the only daughter Yuki had left me, putting all my youth and passion into my work, honing my voice and courage, wrestling in difficult cases. Oh, so he did have the kid at least. Alright. Like she didn't die while after his wife fell, maybe killed the baby with her, I don't know. Nothing like my family during the kidnapping incident would have occurred. I wouldn't have been so to react in a one-on-one fight, and by that point I'd jump into a foreign mafia around gambling parlors where I'd learned to deal with automatic weapons, let alone handguns. I had grown so much in 1983 I couldn't have even compared to how I was in 1978. That's why, if I was her by her side, I should have been able to save her life. No matter what conspiracy or foul plots drew near, I definitely would have protected her. She, even though suddenly resigned, should have still been able to ask me for help. I just realized that I couldn't realize it. Just as I wouldn't have realized it if I was told of Yuki's accident, I was able to realize it. I wanted to cry. If I had taken her words to heart, I would have prevented Yuki's accident, and I would have been able to protect the girl to whom I owed a debt from, even after determined death. She must have been expecting that from me. I learned of the disaster while watching television in my house. Until I learned about that, I had forgotten about Himasawa. In order to recover from the shock of Yuki's death, I had tried to remove everything about the place from my memory. What an ungrateful fool I was, even though in exchange for saving her, the girl had told me a way to save Yuki. I was unable to accept her gratitude, and now here we were. She hadn't died in her sleep due to a natural disaster. She was split open while still alive, killed while suffering the disgrace of her organs, having her organs torn out. She must have been known beforehand on the day that year she would be killed in such a terrifying way. But even knowing that what awaited her, she was all too weak, a lone girl with anybody to rely upon, unable to seek help, had to swallow on her predetermined death and left this mortal coil. She said that she wanted to live. She said she just wanted to live happily. That's all she wanted. She didn't ask for anything extravagant. For any person that was born, it was the very basis of desires. She never said a peep about wanting money or that what she wished she was in someone else's situation. She had said it, that if all deaths were preordained, then hers was probably also all according to plan. She might have been a lone, frail girl, but I don't think she would have accepted it without at least putting up a fight. It must have been in some small way, some form of resistance that she mustered, and with what she could muster, seeking my help was part of that. Goddamn it, I howled. I stomped the floor. Why did I become a police officer in the first place? How could I call myself an officer if I couldn't save a single girl from the misfortune that was waiting on her? Was it because there was so much going on at the time I couldn't process the fact that she was asking for help? That's right, I was still green. If I was in that situation now, I'd definitely been able to help her, but it was already all over. Even if I wanted to settle the regret she left behind, and it was always a dangerous area, was still quarantined. Most of the people involved were already dead, with a few that did remain spread around the country and able to be traced. The stage of that tragedy was still off limits as well. The police investigation was put on hold, the case slowly being buried in the sands of time. Just like how I didn't have known unless Oishi had asked me about it. Akasaka-san, are you okay? At some point, Oishi had returned with a notebook in hand. Until I saw the expression on Oishi's face, I didn't realize I was in tears. I never realized she wanted help. Akasaka-san, calm down, but it's just all too late now. She was killed in such an atrocious manner. She was cutting on me, but I couldn't save her. I might also be at fault for not building up an amicable relationship with the village. If Rika had told me about it, I might have been able to extend a helping hand. I wasn't able to build up enough trust for that. That's something I regret. When she said the trust, it weighed on me even more. Yes, she had given me her trust. She trusted me. Meaning that she thought I would have been able to ward off the fate of her forcing death. She believed in that. I cried. I felt in my hands and knees as I began to bawl. And eventually, she spoke quietly. Akasaka-san, does it upset you? It does, then. There's only one way worth mentioning for Rika Fuda to have a revenge. Is there a way to do that? Oishi showed me the pen and notebook. In order to properly mourn the death of Rika Fuda, we have to at least find out the truth. The truth. Yes, not just Rika Fuda. Lots of people died. Their lament must be immeasurable, but their deaths were left unsettled because of the disaster, and then we can't even investigate them as memory fades into oblivion. Many people died. The old man was killed. Kimo-chan was erased. Everybody was a victim, but the police came and investigated. Who's going to take care of their parting regrets? Only we can. Akasaka-san, we found the truth. Yeah, we'll find it. I've been around every one of the string of mysterious deaths and all of the inner workings of the village. You were told an important truth the year before they kidnapped by Rika Fuda. We can do it. But they're already dead. Oh, that's right. Rika Fuda died. You were too inexperienced, so you couldn't save her. Wow, she grabbed me, who was a wreck, and lifted me firmly by the lapels. That's why, to atone for that, we reveal the truth. If you say it's true, then all the incidents were part of some greater design. If that's the case, then how we investigate needs to change completely. I intend to spend tonight summarizing all the information you and I have, and then get in contact with one of my former subordinates first thing in the morning. We're not going to let the case go cold. We're definitely going to crack it wide open. Crack it open. Crack it open. We will. Several years have passed, but it's now beyond the statute of limitations. Even if the case has been postponed, it's not closed. If it's still going, we're going to keep it going. Oishi and I vowed to bring the truth of the case to light and stood up. Everything ended in 1985. I at least wanted to apologize. I searched for her grave. After the state autopsy remains for entrusted to one of the shrine's followers. In the future, when the quarantine in the Himatsubushi area was lifted, they would be returned to her family grave. However, unsure who exactly took the remains of Fukafude. Until today, I couldn't even apologize to her. In the future, when the quarantine on the Himatsubushi was lifted, all I could do was wait until whoever that person is returned to the grave. What I could do right now was not apologize to her instead, and then until I was able to meet her again, I would reveal the truth and dispel her regrets. Even now, sporadic eruptions of the gas in the Himatsubushi area meant that the prospect of the quarantine being lifted was happening anytime soon. Most likely, it seemed like she had no intention of meeting me again until I found the truth. That's why the quarantine wouldn't be lifted, or so I thought, until the day I grasped the truth. It was the following year, Oishi and I co-authored a book on the string of mysterious deaths leading up to the Great Himatsubushi disaster. I decided on the title, Higurashi, When They Cry. That was because for those few days I was in Himatsubushi, and that sound I remember the most was the cry of the Higurashi. I could only wish that based on this book, those people involved with the incident could refresh their memories and bring light to the new truth. And more importantly, nothing like this ever happens again. I wrote things afterwards. Why did this tragedy happen? When can't reach the truth by ourselves. If you're reading this, please discover the truth. This is our only wish. Kurodo Oishi, Memorial Okasaka. We're Memorial Okasaka. Why the hell did I ever think we were Tamatake in disguise? Why? I don't know. Maybe it's, I don't know. This year the quarantine in Himatsubushi still hasn't been lifted. Oh, my butt hurts. Damn, the seat hurts like hell. I've been sitting there for far too long. Okay, guys, so that is the end of this Higurashi game. Yes, it is the shortest one of this arc. I do not know when the next Higurashi will be, nor do I know when the next Yumeneko will be, since it's part of the same When They Cry series. Different games, but in the same series, I guess. I believe that if you go based off the first two and then 3 and 4, like I just played this, they've only been doing 2 a year, and this will be the second one, I believe. So yeah, I don't know when the next one is going to be. The manga gamer who's doing the English translations for the Steam versions that I've been doing, the next Yumeneko game, they're working on the fighting game, which I will not be doing yet, as apparently it holds a bunch of spoilers. For some reason, why they're doing it now, I don't know, before doing the other Yumeneko visual novels. So I'm not going to do it because I don't want to be spoiled. So thanks guys for watching this. I can't wait for the next Higurashi, and hopefully it'll be average length of about 10 to 13 hours. I'll see you all guys later.